welcome to Angel Heart Radio. I'm Annette McCoy, and with me this morning is Janet Hickox. We're getting in early this time, Janet. We're on the cusp, aren't we? It's the 30th for me and the 29th for you, and we're about to enter, can we believe it, the last quarter of the year.
It's stunning. It just seems like the other day I was commenting to people about in January about all the things that were coming up for 2021. And believe it or not, before we know it, this year will be over. And here we are. And it's almost to that point again. Amazing.
Yes, it is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Before we start, there's a couple of things I need to say, people. May I remind you that these shows should never replace your legal, medical, nor professional advice, nor your own sound judgment. Should you be watching this anywhere else but via Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, can we invite you over to the Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, because that's where you can ask questions and join in the discussion. And Janet and I thoroughly enjoy a discussion. So please move on over so that we can see you and see your comments. And Tom Wright. Oh, well done, Tom. That's a voice from the past, isn't it, Janet?
He's been a long-time listener of ours. And I'm always excited when he can join us here on Angel Heart.
So, good day from Canada. Sorry, no.
Yeah, Tom is in Canada.
All right.
Yeah.
Courtney on the Big Island. Oh, Vancouver. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And Tammy Collins-Smith is joining us.
Hi,
hello,
Tammy.
Tammy.
And she, I believe, is in South Carolina. So completely other side of the nation.
Yes. Vancouver Island. I have wonderful, wonderful memories of staying there with lovely friends. So welcome everybody, wherever you might be. You might like to join in the chat and tell us where we're reaching you today. Janet, as always, there's always something happening in the heavens, isn't there, to impact on what's happening here.
Absolutely. You know, it's never really difficult to come up with a strategy for what we're going to talk about, Annette, because there's always something going on in the stars, whether it's a planet changing direction from retrograde to forward or forward to retrograde, or some planet changing signs. There's always some fun things to talk about. And this month, for a look ahead, we're looking at October. October happens to be jam-packed full of things that we could talk about.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
It is. I hesitate to say it's a good thing to talk about, but it is a good thing to talk about because I think if we didn't talk about these kinds of things, people would be like, you know what is going on out there? I was talking to a friend just a little bit before the show started today, and she was like, what is going on? And I said, well, there's not much going on like right this second today, but all HEQQ is about to break out as we start moving into October. But in reality, we've already been in the lead up to October's energy for nearly the entire month of September. So if you're feeling out of sorts, or if you're feeling like there's been a lot of tenseness, fears coming to the surface, or darkness coming up, you are in good company, because it has been in our field of energy for at least the last month, or through this month. Yeah, and
Thea has joined us. Good morning, Thea. She's obviously somewhere where it's morning. That gives us a clue.
That puts us in your part of the world.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. My day's ending, yours is beginning. That's the funny part.
I know. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we really hold on to our seats or our mats or whatever during October? Be in for a
Yeah.
wild ride.
I was just kind of looking back to see how far back some of this energy goes. And believe it or not, it actually began on, oh my goodness, August 19th. And that, what I'm talking about for everybody is that I always check through human design to find out what the gates are that the planets will be transiting through, especially the sun and the Earth, but also Mercury, Venus, and Mars, because they're all the inner planets. And so they tend to touch us personally, if you will, right? Because they're called the personal planets. And they're called the personal planets because whatever they are touching in a chart happens to us personally. It's not so much on the collective scale. When we get to the planets like Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, did I say Neptune? Neptune and Pluto, they're further out and they tend to move slower. And so they tend to create a collective sort of energy shift. Well, back in August, the planet Mars first moved into the gate 48, which happens to be a gate on the spleen. Are we getting an up close and personal view?
Oh, what happened then?
I could see up your nose.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It was funny. I'm like, what is she doing? Oh gosh,
I'm very sorry, everybody. I was reaching for a tissue.
This is what happens when you're on live broadcasts, right? Anyway,
it'd be interesting to look at the feedback because I have a feeling that was only you. I'm hoping that was only you seeing that, Janet.
I don't know, but we're live streaming, so what I see, they should see.
I know, but I have tricks.
You'll fix that later. Oh goodness, that's funny.
Someone will tell me.
Yeah. Oh, who cares? It's just your face.
Welcome, Elaine. And Thea lives here so Elaine and Thea live here in Victoria, quite close to me. So, all right, back to what you were saying. I'm very sorry.
Don't
TV.
So basically, what I was saying is that since August 19th. Various inner planets, Mars and then Venus would have done this, and then Mercury, and now the sun, are moving through the energy center in our human design called the Spleen Center. And the Spleen Center is really about time and intuition and health. And our immune system, right, is parked in the spleen center. And it is also what takes us into that instinctual or gut instinct intuition energy. And it is also the energy then for survival. And survival, important, right? Humans, we've been on this planet for I don't know how many millions of years, and the spleen has done its job. It's kept us alive, right? We know when to flight. What is it? Fight, flight, or freeze, and that has served humanity well. But over the course of time, the very energies of the spleen that have kept us in survival has shifted into energies that we might call false evidence appearing real, or the acronym of fear. And so those gates now, as they get hit by various planets, tend to trigger the shadow energies on the planet. So shadow energies equal fear energies. And we see it collectively, but we also sense it personally in our own lives. So depending on the planet, depending on how it is set up in your own chart and so forth. But from that date, August 19th, all the way through November 2nd now, we have this intensity as the planets have ramped up. We've had the outer planets in retrograde, which just by that alone, whether they were in gates of fear or not, tend to take us inward and tend to stir up the places within us that are still attached to fear or are still attached to shadows. And as we move further now into the fall here, or in the spring in your case, into October, what we have is the sun highlighting those gates of fear, and we have Mars still sitting in those gates of fear. And now we have Mercury in retrograde taking his sweet time, triggering those gates and then going backwards over them and then coming forward over them. So we have a longer term presence of potentially fearful, shadowy energies holding sway on the planet. And there's a purpose, right? There is a purpose to this. The fear isn't to create more fear or more reaction on the part of us mere mortals, but to help us to see where we are still holding on to some of those energies in our energy fields so that we can attempt to let them go, or to rise from the level of the shadow or the fear up into the gift level. And now I'm talking about the gene keys, where we can see we have this movement, this pathway that we can take from that shadow into the gift and then into the mastery or the highest level called the city in the gene keys, to be able to see how we can really move out of fear and change the face of the planet, literally change the energy of the planet and of humanity. But it takes some work.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head, because it's really easy to talk about it, Janet. The thing is putting it into practice, to being able to let go of our fears.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes if people don't really recognize what they're feeling as a fear or as a shadow energy. And when we look at human design, and when we look at the gene keys, which are related to one another, but a little bit different, we can really see the hold that fear has had on the planet, and how a lot of you name it, every problem that we have today, every interpersonal problem, any collective problem, every war, everything that is of a shadowy nature on this planet can be traced back to fear. And I think that's something people miss. I mean, yeah, we may think we're going to a war with a nation for a specific reason, like, I don't know, a terror attack. We've done that before, or somebody doing a land grab or something like that. But underneath that reason that sounds justifiable on the surface lies a fear that we're going to lose something, that our territory is going to be taken away, our freedoms are going to be taken away. And all you have to do is look outside the world right now at COVID, which is, I can't even believe we still have to talk about this, lies fear, right? Fear about the virus itself dying, the fear of the vaccine or the not vaccine, fear of the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated people. I mean, it's just ridiculous, because everything is related to our fear, and it becomes palpable, and it becomes something we focus on, and then it becomes something more real to us, right? We never really get the chance to move through that splenic energy in a way that allows us to kick out the fear. If anything, in some cases, I think we re-energize it, and then we have more lessons to learn around it.
Sure. Now, Thea has made a wonderful comment, and I'd like to welcome Stephanie. She's sitting in the car waiting for a test as we speak. So good on you for joining us, Stephanie. Brightening your
Definitely. Day. Must be Stephanie Coy.
It is. Yeah.
She's down under as well with you.
Yes, living quite close by, it seems. And Carol has joined us too. Welcome, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Thea is saying, I've never felt anything like the stressful energy that is around at the moment. I'm so tense in my head, neck and shoulders. I've turned to meditation before bed. Yay. You've hit the nail on the head. I just have to keep grounding myself.
Most definitely. And, more than that, I don't advocate to people to not go into fear. There's no point in doing that, right? To do that would be to keep it coming up and keep it alive, because what you resist persists. So what I tell people when we go into this season is dive in, right? Dive into the fear. What is it that you're fearful of? And, make it as big as you can. We had a conversation once, Annette, where we were talking about a sort of meditation that people can do about fear, which is to dive into it, make it as big as you can possibly make it so that it fills up your whole body or your whole room or your whole house or your community, your state, your country, the world, right? Make it as big as you can. Once you have that as big as you can possibly get it, then apply love energy to it. And you can use that as a color, perhaps a color or a feeling. I often think of it when I'm doing that, I often look at it as a color like gold or white, but it can literally be any color that to you represents love energy, and watch the effect that love has on that feeling that you are having about fear. It tends to dissipate it or obliterate it or mute it down so much that it becomes this little teeny tiny fear, becomes manageable. So we have to learn to not push the fear away, but we also don't want to make that fear a reality that we live out of, which is pretty much what we've been doing. And I was just looking at like today's energy, today being is it the 29th where I am? It's the 30th where you are. Either way you look at it, we are sitting with the sun at the gate 18, which is the fear of judgment or criticizing or constructive criticism gone wrong, right? Where we're perfectionistic or something. As well, the planet Mars is sitting at that gate, and the planet Mercury is sitting at the gate of fear of success or fear of failure. So we have multiple fear fields that are being, lit up at the same time. So, which doesn't always happen, right? It doesn't always happen that way. And we've been doing this for quite the while, it seems, right? That those inner planets and the sun have lighted up the fears almost sequentially and then back again. It's like an accordion, you're going in and out of these fears. And then another planet moves in and takes up the same energy and moves in and out of it. So we've had a lot to contend with, and it's not going away until much later. I think I did have a date of November 2nd. Let me just check that out. Okay, so I lied. It's not over. It's not really over until November 18th.
Oh, wow.
And that's when, well, there's still that one, 38. No, that's not a fear gate. So yeah, November 18th, finally Mars clears the last of the gates. The sun will be out of them, and so will Mercury, and so will Venus. So that's a month and 3 weeks still.
I know. That's huge.
It's huge. And now throw into that major planets, including Mercury, that are changing from retrograde motion into forward motion. And it's bad enough, I was telling, was it you or a friend? I'm saying it's bad enough when one planet does it. But when you have them all swishing into new directions sequentially or one right after the other, it knocks us off our center.
Right.
And we have that happening in tandem with the planet sitting at all of these gates. What are we to do? What's a girl to do? What's a guy to do, right? So I'm hoping we can have a little bit of a discussion about what those fears specifically are, what they might be, and what's the highest expression of those energies. I should get my little cheat sheet out of that, because that comes from the gene keys, where we can move the shadow energy we can move the energy from the shadow through to the gift and the city. And it's really just about taking in consciousness and being aware and awareness about what's happening around you and what you're doing. And you could look at it like, do I want to participate in the fear field, or do I want to participate in the healing of said fear field?
It's interesting, Janet, that you mentioned the fear of success, because I think we're all well aware of the fear of failure. And yet how often do we stop to consider, maybe, gee, am I fearing success?
I started noticing probably about 4 or 5 years ago that when I would talk to people about success and failure in their chart, if they had this particular gate defined, that they were as much afraid of success as they were about the actual failure. So in some cases, I think people hold themselves back, or they hold back a part of themselves instead of diving all in and just saying, you know what, if I succeed, great. If I fail, great. They sort of monitor how much they actually put out, so that if they fail, it's not like a far fall down to the ground. But or if they're afraid of success, that they're going to have, a long way down. So they hold themselves back. And I think we see that in the gate that Mercury is in the longest through this particular month. And because Mercury is related to the mind and is related to what we communicate, it is very much possible that we have to reframe not only the thoughts that we're thinking, but also the words that we're saying, because we may be inadvertently even creating more of the fear of the failure or success than we might think, just based on what we say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Another timely reminder. Yes, we are our thoughts, we are our words. And our words can, if we stop to listen to ourselves, we can, or maybe somebody else will point out words that we might be using repeatedly. I know a girlfriend very kindly did that to me at one stage a few years ago. And I went, oh, yes, maybe something was troubling me that I didn't think it was.
Well, and somebody said something to me the other day about something I said. And I went, oh, I mean, when you think about even like words like diet, like the word diet has the word die in it. And, things that we say, like, just flippantly that we throw out there have power and have meaning. And, I know what it was. This was me and my husband. I caught him saying something like, what was it? He was eating like cheesecake, and he said that cheesecake is to die for.
Yeah.
Really? How about cheesecake is to live for?
Yeah.
Because, because don't you want to keep living so that you can eat more cheesecake? I mean, I don't know, but I don't think I want to die from cheesecake overload. So it just makes me laugh to think about these idiomatic expressions that we have, and we're not even thinking about what we're saying when we say them. So I think with Mercury sitting at that particular gate right now, we have a lot of opportunities to look at what are the words, the thoughts, the phrases that we say around success or failure in our lives, right? And that's the beauty of Mercury in retrograde, is being able to reimagine these things, being able to go in and take a look at once more at what am I saying, and what was I trying to say? Well, I was trying to say, I really love this cheesecake and I want more, right?
Yes.
I really appreciate the maker of this cheesecake. But the words that I used suggest that I'm going to die from it. Or I'm going to, have a problem with it.
It's a popular phrase that I've never really thought about before.
Right.
So we have lots of people joining us in the chat room. So maybe people might like to bring up some sayings or some phrases that are common, that or phrases that we are aware of what we use, and maybe we've changed how we speak because we've become aware of phrases that serve us no purpose, in fact hold us back.
Right. And think about the ways that we talk to ourselves.
Yes. I used to call myself an idiot frequently.
Been there, done that. I probably still do it at times. And, the thing about that is, I would never say that to you as a friend. I would never say that to my loved ones. But I would say it to myself. And then all I'm really doing is labeling myself as that thing, which suggests, a very non-loving energy directed at me. Right. So we have lots that we can think about here, not only because Mercury is retrograde and it has to do with what we say or the words or the things that we think about, But Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Libra, and Libra is a relationship sign. And the number one relationship we have is with ourselves. And are we undermining that relationship by the things that we say or the things that we think? But then also, how does that play out in our relationships with others, our most significant others, our family, our friends, even our clients or our customers could be affected by these flippant words that we say. So it's just about bringing more consciousness, I think, to the fact that underlying those phrases is a fear. And as in the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd would say that our main fear is about dying, dying, death, right? Death is the one big fear. And that a lot of the things that we do to protect ourselves through the different fear lenses is all about maintaining our integrity, our boundaries, our selfhood, so that we don't die. Like, what's going to happen if you're afraid of doing a speech? Let's say you're afraid of getting up in front of a classroom or a group of people and talking about a subject near and dear to your heart. What are you afraid is going to happen? Have you ever thought about that? What are you really afraid? Are you going to stumble through your words and say something that you didn't mean, and they're going to throw tomatoes at you, or you know, come in and you know, remove you from the room? I mean, you have to almost get ridiculous sometimes with the fear, so that you can see how much power that little fear has over you and your enjoyment of your life.
Sure.
Of the things that you're willing to do.
Interesting. Now, there's some lovely comments coming through. Carol actually likes Mercury retrogrades. And Carol also has an interesting look, changing out the words that we use, you know, dieting or losing weight, changing it to slimming or reducing weight.
Right. We have plenty of other words in the language that we could use, right? So that we don't have to put in loaded words that have a meaning to us that, you know, takes us into death or takes us into anger or upset or any of the fears that we have. So we were talking, was that you and me? One time we were talking about wars and how everything that we look at in our outer world that we want to change becomes a war. The war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on fill in the blank, obesity, or
right. Now that, I don't know that we did, but that is interesting, isn't it, that we use that word war. It's the same as when people say, oh, they're fighting a disease, whereas to embrace a situation has a different connotation. You know,
I'm healing from a disease.
Let's embrace it and see what it can bring for us.
Yeah, I'm working through a problem, or I'm doing things that, you know, making it sound like it's a positive, instead of going to, you know, I'm fighting with this thing, or I'm, you know, Yeah.
Tom's made the comment that quite often the phrases that we're talking about don't happen in languages other than English, and sometimes
that's interesting.
It is an interesting comment, isn't it? Carol would like you to explain the gene keys.
The gene keys in general, Carol, or well, let's start with general, and then
what are the gene keys?
Good question. So the gene keys are related to the human design gates. And in human design, there are 64 gates, and they are spread across 9 energy centers in the body. Well, Richard Rudd, who wrote the book, The Gene Keys, also was a human design practitioner. So he knew human design first. And one day he had the sort of spiritual revelation that each of those gates in human design could also become a hologram or a holographic picturing of the words, so that we would be moving through from fear or from the shadow into the gift and into the city. Siddhi, Siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word that I believe means mastery or highest achievement of something. So the gene keys are really just a deeper, more contemplative view of each of the gates in your human design. Now, those gates in your human design and those gene keys are related to the codons in your DNA. So they tend to be traits that are coded for in your DNA by the placement of planets at your birth, but also at a time 3 months before your birth, that complete the whole crystalline structure of the human being. So it takes us into the very fabric of who we are to study human design, to study the gene keys, and even astrology at this point isn't really about the traits of your DNA, but has an affinity for or a connection to all those same energies. So putting them all together, you get sort of a story that develops. So if we looked, for example, let's see, tomorrow is September 30th. Let's scoot ahead another couple of days. No, let's deal with 18. We can deal with the gene key, human design gate 18. Which in human design and the gene keys is the lowest energy of judgment, right? Judgment. So it is an energy that in the gift level is integrity. And in its highest expression, it becomes perfection. So we're looking at it through sort of that 5D, fifth dimensional sort of view where we can see the potential for where we could be and also where we are. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, we'll wait for Carol's response. Carol also, she's very into, where are we? Oh, Richard Rudd, gene keys. Thanks for the info. Are the 64 gene keys linked to the 64 keys of Enoch?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know what that is. You stumped me, whoever brought that one up. I want to look that one up for sure because I don't know what that is. But isn't it amazing that it's 64?
Yes.
And there are 64 gates, there are 64 gene keys, and you have 64 pairs of codons in your DNA. And what I find even more fascinating is, and this is just numerological, is that 64 is 8 squared. And 8 as the number is a number that brings us to abundance, but is also a number that reflects the heart-to-heart connection between humanity, especially when it's on its side as the infinity symbol, but also the connection of the divine to the human when an 8 stands upright. So there's a lot of mystical symbolism in 64, in the number 8, and in the fact that there are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, an ancient Chinese divination system. So we see this sort of synchronistic connection or a coherence, if you will, between the I Ching, the human design, the human DNA, and the gene keys. It's almost magical. It is magical.
Incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vaughan very kindly put information in the chat about the gene keys. So that was very kind. And Carol has said J.J. Hurtak. Maybe that's in reference to...
Probably to the Enochian energy or Enochian comment, the 64.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
The Enochian keys or something like that, or I don't know, but that would be a fascinating conversation too. I would love to see how that dovetails in with everything else that we're talking about.
Yes. Well, Vaughan's just said a little synchronicity here. Well, of course.
Of course.
Oh, he just turned 64 this year. Never
Amazing.
felt so incredible. Well done.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
And 64, those 64 gene keys and the 64 hexagrams and the 64 gates in the human design are all these traits that make up the divine human interface, if you will. So everyone, from saint to sinner, can aspire to the highest expression of those gene keys, of those gates even. And of course, maybe that's the reason we're all here. And even when we look at the gates of the spleen, which is the main thrust of this conversation today, where they are all sort of doubling as paralysis points or fear points in our lives and in our charts, there's also the highest expression, right? Judgment can walk the line through integrity to arrive at perfection. Right? And perfection, what is that? Well, it is where you are in the moment when you're not judging yourself as lacking or not perfect. So it's just one of those interesting times of year where we get to really look at the fear level on the planet, but also what is that fear doing to us? And if you read the gene keys, for example, and this is a great time to actually pull out your Gene Keys book and just look at the fears of the spleen. Start with the gate 18, which is the first gate that the sun will hit. And that begins it began on the 27th of September. So just a few days ago. And take a look at the gate 18 and deep dive into it. And the thing is, you may not be born with anything sitting at your gate 18. Like I don't have anything at my gate 18. It's empty. It's open. But now there's the sun sitting there. So even in my own life, when I'm not normally prone to be judgmental or worry about integrity or have, issues around that are, fears based on not being good enough, I can suddenly have that problem or can, see it being magnified in my life in some way. So everybody on the planet right now is being affected by it, whether you were born with it that way or not. We are all going through this together at this time. And we've done it many times, right? Now we have the sun and Mars at that gate 18. So we're being asked to take action in a new direction. Sun and Mars put together, very catalytic, very dynamic, and very forward motion oriented, which means we're being asked to walk in a new direction, a new path. A path that leaves behind criticism and judgment, that instead is empowering people to see their beauty, empowering them to see their perfection.
I sense that, yes, that's what the last couple of years have been about, Janet, for us to rise up and think more highly of ourselves and others, spreading love rather than fear.
Yeah. After we move out of the gate 18, the sun will be in the gate 48, also on the spleen. And that's the gate whose shadow energy is inadequacy. And it is a very interesting energy because what it says in the I Ching is that inside of humanity is a deep well. In each one of us lies a well of knowledge, of wisdom. And instead of trying to access that well of wisdom within us, we are always on the hunt for information in the outer world. And then that is supposedly the hunt to make us feel more adequate, right? Or more wise or more knowing or knowledgeable. But it becomes an endless search for more and more facts and figures and information that never really makes us feel like we know enough. I bet people, I know people who are constantly on the search for their next certification, their next book they must read, or their next degree that they must get in order to feel good enough to go out there and live their passion and do what they love. In reality, the gate suggests that we need to go out there and do, and that's how we learn. Not just from books or from getting, certified, but actual demonstration of those talents out there in the world. And as you are demonstrating that talent, you're calling upon the wisdom that's held deep within the cellular memories of you as a human being, of us as human beings. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen the movies The Matrix, where they plug in, and when they plug in, it's like all of this wisdom is downloaded into them. That's, something we can do. We can plug in at some point in our evolution. And I don't think that's happening today or tomorrow, but sometime in our evolution, we're going to be able to just plug in. And by that, I mean, just go within. And if I need the skills to know how to do something, it's in here. It's in here. Why? Because every human being and every experience that's ever been is encoded in our DNA. And we just haven't learned how to access that yet. Right. But we can. It's there in the I Ching. It's there in the human design. It's there in the gene keys that we can access that. That wisdom lies within us. Now, after we get done playing with that one, we get to move on to the gate 57, also on the Spleen Center, which is called the gate of intuition. It is the most psychic gate in all of human design. Yet I can tell you, my own husband included, and one of my good friends, both born with that gate defined, who don't believe themselves to be psychic, yet will tell me things and then they come to pass. It's just amazing. And I finally learned after, I don't know, almost 40 years of being married to the man, that when he says something like, let's go do this, it's coming from his intuition. And I don't even fight it anymore. I just go with that flow, because that when that's defined, that intuition is spot on. It's instinctual. And it is a fear of the future, like I might not be right, or I'm afraid this will come to pass, that causes us to stop tuning in to our intuition, or we put our intuition in the back seat and give the power to the mind to look for the answers to what it is that we might be sensing that might happen. So we're looking for the evidence outside of us instead of listening to the voice within. So it's a tricky gate, but every one of us is going to be experiencing this energy come, let's see, October 8th through 13th, right? So we get to look forward to being more intuitive, to really listening to our intuition, and without the fear of what it means for our future, right? What does it mean? What does the future mean? Once we get through that gate, we go to the gate 32, which is the gate of the fear, where we have fear of success or fear of failure. And that's a tricky one, because that gate is connected to drive and ambition on the other side of it. And the drive and the ambition propels us all out into the world on our hero's journey, on our quest to find answers or to get our passions out in the world. And the first place that drive and ambition bumps up against is the fear of success or failure. Nothing dries up a quest faster than worry around whether you're going to succeed or fail. So one of the things that we have to learn here is that sometimes it's just the experience. It's not about succeeding or failing. It's just about, did you do it? Did you experience something? Because ultimately we learn something. There's always a takeaway message, I got to think about this really a lot the other night. I was at a state fair, and where I was there for a concert, but I was sitting in my seat at the concert, and I was looking out at these two tall poles that went straight up in the air with these ropes or bungees that were connected and to a harness, and people in the harness, and they were launched up into the air, and they were, 60, 70 feet into the air. And then it catches and drops them down. And then it pushes them back up and down. And I'm sitting there. I mean, I could feel my stomach going up and down watching these people and thinking how terrified I was for them. I was like, oh my gosh, this is that fear. I'm not going to be successful at this jump. The rope is going to break, or the bungee is going to break, and I'm going to go flying off into space and land on my head somewhere in the river or whatever, right? So fear plays this role in our lives unconsciously, even if you're just sitting there at a concert watching what someone else seems to be enjoying. And I'm going, oh, and what does failure mean in that case? You die? It might. I don't know if they had big balloons underneath there if you fell or something, but it was just one of those things and happening in this time period of where all this fear comes up to the surface.
Right.
So when we get done with that fear, we move into the gate 50 or the gene key 50. They're interchangeable terms. And that is a tricky one too, because the gate itself is about nurturing. It is about passing on to our youngsters, to our family members, the values, the rules, the laws, the education that we have that keeps the tribe healthy or keeps our communities healthy. The fear in the gate, though, is when we go too far and we fear that we're going to fail in our responsibilities to our families, to our friends. So we tend to smother or overdo nurturing and leave ourselves out of that nurturing equation. So it's a gate that reminds us to be self-nurturing, that you can't continue to give and give and give from a place of lack. So you have to be able to feed yourself as well as feeding others, right? So it's a very powerful gate. It is a very feminine energy. It's on the feminine side of the human design. And I see this a lot in women that have this gate to find and are constantly giving away their power and their energy to their kids, to their family, other family members, to their community, to their jobs or their careers, and find later that they're coming from a deficit. It's that superwoman sort of syndrome that that we contend with here. So the fear is that I'm going to fail in my responsibility to the family, but in reality, who you're failing is yourself. So another interesting kind of fear there. And then from there, we go to the gate 28. Now, this is one that a lot of the millennials are experiencing because this gate was activated by Neptune, I believe it was, and during the 90s, late 90s and early 2000s. And it's a gate that is yearning to find meaning. And they find in the shadow that there's this purposelessness to life, that there is no real meaning. And if you have noticed on the planet, there's a lot of people choosing to die by suicide, likely, not all, but likely some anyway, because life seems purposeless, like they can't find the meaning in life. So the gate 28's fear is that there isn't any reason for me to be here, that everything is too hard, everything's a struggle, and everything turns into a fight, and everything seems to be difficult. And that is a search. Yeah, in that particular gene key, by the way, that is the gate 28. That one goes from purposelessness to totality to immortality. It's an interesting progression, don't you think? Totality from purposelessness to totality to immortality. And that's when we dive all in and we choose to sort of live the life of the adventurer. And it has a sort of Sagittarian feel, I feel, and living life, as an adventure and not so much from the struggle. And the last gate that we hit upon will be the gate 44. And that is a gate that is a fear of the past or the past repeating itself. So we have baggage, right? We're carrying this baggage with us into the now, expecting that the next time we meet up with this particular energy or this particular person, that the same thing that happened in the past will happen in the future. And so we are always then trying to escape the past or keep the past from catching up to us in the now so that we don't have to take the past with us into the future. So the 44 itself is a definite call for us to let go of the past, leave the past where it is. You can learn the lessons from the past, but you don't have to carry the baggage from the past with you into the now. And just because something happened or ended in a certain way last time does not mean that it's going to happen that same way again. And then finally, we are done with the fear energies of the spleen, even though we still have other planets like Mercury and Mars that are going to be pushing through those different gates at different times, which means we're keeping that potential for healing from the fear energy or from the shadow energy alive for a very long time this year.
And that's unusual?
It is. It's not unusual because every year at the last week of September, all through October and the first week in November, we have the sun transiting through the spleen and the gates of fear there. But what's different right now is that Venus and Mercury and Mars are close together. They're like tag teaming each other through the signs. And these are the signs, by the way, of Libra and Scorpio that are primarily where the fear resides, or where the fear gates of the spleen, the survival energies are. And so it's not unusual then to experience the sun moving through them. It is unusual to experience all of the other inner planets at the same time moving through those same gates.
Mm-hmm.
So it just sort of elongates the time period.
Right. And does that mean it will be more intense?
Yes.
Be more intense?
Much more intense, because it's not just the sun, right? It's not just one planet. It's also Mercury. So it's your mind. It's the way we talk. It's also Venus hitting our relationships, our self-worth, and our ability to attract resources that we need. It's also Mars, the action that we can take, the forward momentum that, I feel like a lot of people are kind of stuck, and they're stuck because these fear gates are being hit. It's paralysis, right? It's the inability to move forward fearlessly. And it compounds because we have so many millions or billions of people on this planet all playing in this playpen at the same time. Right? So it's not just you and me talking about it to you and our listeners hearing it. It's all of the unconsciousness around us, other people who don't really recognize what's happening that are playing into it. And so we have to know what we're experiencing and understand this too shall pass.
Yes.
But we also have the responsibility during this period of time to move through it with ease and with grace, and allowing ourselves to become elevated out of the fear, at least into the gift level of our experience. So like, for example, the 50, the gate that we were talking about that has the fear of failing in your responsibility to your family, has equilibrium and harmony as its higher two energies. Move into equilibrium. That would suggest I get what I need, you get what you need, and we balance that out. We harmonize. So that's the potential there through the human design for the next 6 to 8 weeks, right? Yeah. But we also have...
There's a lot to take in, Janet. Thank goodness we have a replay.
Definitely a replay. But we also have help now coming, in that we have planets that have been in retrograde: Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury goes much faster through his retrograde, but those other three have been in retrograde since April and May. And now they're moving to direct motion, and they're going to do it pretty sequentially, right? Very quickly, one another. For example, Pluto on October 6th, on October 10th, Saturn, and on October 17th, Jupiter, and then on October 18th, Mercury. So they're all changing from retrograde to direct very quickly upon one another. That's a little odd as well. I mean, it's not unheard of, but when you have that much change going on in one period of time, one short period of time, it can really upset the energies on the planet. So, and the Earth is a sentient being as well. So it's not just humanity, it's the Earth, it's the other planets, it's the sun, it's the animals on the planet, the plants on the planet. Everything is going to be in the receiving of these energies as they change from this retrograde to direct motion. And let's go back a minute and just talk about retrogrades. What are they? Because it's not really the planet going backwards through the sky. That's not really happening. It's more of a mechanical thing that happens when a faster planet passes you by, and or you on the faster planet pass a slower planet. And so it's a mirage, right? That's really happening. But what it signifies for us is the movement from the outward expression of a direct planet, where it's affecting the outer world, to the connection to our inner world being affected. So when a planet is in retrograde, we're working on the things on the inner planes, right, that we can work on. If it's an inner planet like Mercury, Mars, Venus, we're experiencing it personally. If it's Jupiter or Saturn, we're often seeing it reflected to us in society or in the culture. If it is Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, it's the collective. So it's the whole of the field of energy that is being affected by that change. So right now we have an outer planet, a collective planet, Pluto, getting ready to change. We have the two societal or cultural planets that are getting ready to change, and an inner planet that is going to change. So we're being affected at all levels, right? From moving from the inner dimension to the expression of those things into the outer dimension. And that might lead us to some rocking and rolling and some tempests and some magical things that could be happening. I think we all experience these energies differently based on what our charts look like. So when we experience the direct motion of a planet, it is suddenly the things that we've been changing in here have to find their place in the outer world. And for the first week or so that that planet changes that direction, the world itself can seem a little wonky, that people have gone mad or crazy, or weird things happen, or the shadows maybe hold sway of that particular planet until it smooths out again, and we, get into the rhythm of expressing that planet. Well, we're barely getting into the rhythm of one planet expressing itself before another one changes. And then another one changes, and then another one changes. So it's going to take our breath away a bit for the month of October, at least. And I thought if we took a look at some of the gates that these planets are sitting at in our human design, we might be able to catch a little bit more feeling as to what is going on in the field. So let's deal with Pluto first. Pluto is in our human design in the head center, the very top center, sitting in the middle gate, the gate 61. The gate 61 is called the gate of awe or wonder. It's a very magical place, right? Except when it's not. And when it's not, it's in psychosis. So the shadow energy of Pluto at the gate 61 and ready to change direction is all about psychosis. And psychosis is a mental disruption, right? A mental anxiety. I'm sure if I looked up the word, it would say something like, a mental breakdown, right? Or a field of mental energy that is unbalanced or unreal. So psychosis, take a look at the world around us. What do we see, right? Saturn is turning direct at the gate 41, a gate of imagination, being able to see beyond where we are now and to bring something magical into reality. Jupiter will be turning direct at the gate 49, the gate of revolution. Well, there we have it. Something big coming our way, some big change. Mercury will turn direct at the gate 48, which is the one we talked about, where the fear is inadequacy, where we need to look within to find all of the information, the skills that we need in order to be thriving and not just surviving.
Important. Now, Janet, there's a lot going on in the chat room while you are giving us all of this information. And I'd like to welcome the people who have joined us, and I hope that I don't leave anyone else. Your friend and mine, Londa, is with us. And hello. Natasha has joined us. Hello. And also, Debbie realised that she, although she set up a reminder, etc., that she joined us very late. However, Debbie gives me the opportunity to remind people that, of course, there is a replay. And I know myself, I'll be listening because it's been information overload. I need to remind people that if they would like a human design chart, and there's also something else you offer on your wonderful website, living-or-astrology.com.
Right. So they can get a free human design chart and report. And as well, they can request an astrology chart and report. So both of those things are free on my website, but give you heaps of information about who you are designed to be. What you'll need once you get to my site is your date of birth, your time of birth, and place of birth. And I don't know why people seem to think that I'm going to know where certain cities are in the world. So please, I am smart. I do know that. But somebody one day just wrote Sydney, and I'm like, okay, is that Australia? Is there a Sydney somewhere else in the world? I don't know. So I just, please put your country of birth. If you're in the United States, put your state. So because many states in the USA have cities that are named the same thing. Yes. So I really need to know that in order for the information to be accurate. So your birth date, the whole date, day, month, year, and as well your time of birth, and make sure you let me know if it's AM or PM, or if you are doing it in military time or 24-hour clock time. I'll figure that one out. And please, a whole complete city, state, country of your birth. And then you get that chart and you get that report and you can read about yourself. And you can, I can't even tell you how many times a day I get an email back from someone who's received their chart going, how did you know? How did you know me? It's amazing.
Helen Harris, who has joined us. Thank you, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Highly recommend working with Janet. My human design reading a few years ago still helps me daily.
Thank you, Helen, for saying that, because that's very true. Having a human design reading is personalized, right? The report is great, but when you can personalize it, when you can ask questions of me while we're doing your reading about how this works for you, or the times where it's blown up in your face, that kind of thing, that stuff's priceless, because that's you and me working together to really help you define the truth of who you are. So a human design reading is for that. And guess what? I totally forgot about this. Until the end of October, human design readings are $20 off. They're normally $199. Right now, they're $179. So this is your time. Human design readings are at a discount.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, Natasha, thank you for saying that you're grateful for all that we do. Here at Angel Heart Radio, we are delighted to be able to do what we do. And Janet is with me regularly every month. And I feel, Janet, as though I chopped you off because you were still talking about gates. Are there other things that you wish to share?
Oh, honey, you and I could go on for hours, right? I could do this for hours, but I happened to look down at the time and went, oops. So I get it, right? The hour has gone by. But there's always so much more to talk about. But I also do a morning show, a broadcast at 8 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays and on Fridays. So if you want to find out more, usually on those days, I'm going deeper into what's playing out right that day or in the next couple of days. So there's always more to learn. And sometimes I dive into a teaching lesson about something. Other times it's just purely astrology. So, but that's on Mondays and Fridays, and you can find that on Facebook at my Living Astrology Facebook page, or on YouTube and my Living Astrology YouTube page.
And for those people like me who are in the Southern Hemisphere, we don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to listen.
That's right.
Can watch the replay, which is wonderful. Janet, we have some wonderful comments here. Tammy Collins Smith. Yes, she received both from you. Awesome insights. Do the reading, answered a lot of questions. So people are really encouraging today, which is fantastic. And your gorgeous daughter, Heather.
Hi, Heather.
She is very great at what she does, and not just because she is my mum.
Although I love that she's listening. Oh my goodness. It's an amazing experience to share these kinds of gifts with amazing customers and clients. But I can't tell you, there's a special place in my heart when I get to share this stuff with my family, because I feel that in some ways I came here with them to teach them this stuff, or to at least show them the way. And sometimes it's harder to share this kind of stuff with your family than it is with a friend or with a client. So wonderful to see her out there.
Well, Tammy says, you are so blessed, Heather.
Tammy, one of my biggest fans. I love it.
I delighted in the fact that people who were in the chat knew each other, and it was great to be able to see them saying hello and reaching out across the waves.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why I love doing the shows in the morning, because it's really become a community of people. And so we kind of all know each other now, and welcome, of course, new members to come. It's not even members, but welcome new people to come in and listen. But I think a lot of times people come in and they come back over and over and over again, because it is a community, and people are there to say happy birthday, or hope you feel better, or, you know, that's the same, you know, transit that I'm experiencing, and things like that. So it really has become more of a community. But if that's been, you know, building over, well, I don't know how many years now, since I want to say Valentine's Day of 2013 was the first time I came on air.
Wow.
8 years, almost 9 years. Time flies. Yeah.
And we are blessed. Vaughan was saying so earlier. And I encourage people, if you would like to look at the chat that has happened during the show, go to Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, because there are some very interesting comments and information there. That I know we were talking about a couple of books that people might like to follow up on, and information that people have shared. Vaughan is on Santorini Island. How fortunate is he at the moment?
Santorini doesn't that have a volcano on it?
Well, it's a Greek island, one that's very famous, and I know it's on my list.
Places to go. I know Crete just had a huge earthquake too, as well as you there in Melbourne, Australia. So
yes,
yeah, and the volcanoes are erupting. The planet is really just sort of showing us the same energy of change and shift that we're all being asked to experience. And you know, when I start to see, you know, earthquakes, fires, floods, volcanic eruptions, all of that kind of stuff spiking, it is often because some major change is occurring, even in the planetary energy of, you know, like the planets that are changing from retrograde to direct are going to have that kind of bumpy effect here on this planet. And even the sun sometimes is in reaction to those major changes that are happening in the planetary field.
So because there's so many planets involved at the moment directly, would that be increasing the chances of earthly, like tempests and storms and earthquakes, etc.?
The planets that are changing, Pluto is in an earth sign. And so that speaks to earthquakes and fires and perhaps those kinds of things that change the face of the planet herself. The planet Saturn and Jupiter are both in Aquarius, which is an air sign. So that to me speaks to the storminess, winds blowing, upset in thinking and ideas that are shifting and morphing and what have you. Mercury is also in an air sign. So we also have the planet that is often indicating trouble in our minds, trouble in our transportation, and trouble with our computers in an air sign. So things like viruses and things that travel through the air. So possibly, being upset, air quality and what have you. So there's nothing going on in the water signs, no retrogrades or anything like that in the water signs. Although we'll still have Neptune retrograde in Pisces, a water sign, and Uranus will still be retrograde in Earth in Taurus. So if anybody's going to play a role in creating havoc on Earth, it's probably Uranus when he changes, and that won't be until January.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that the rest of them aren't kicking up the dust, because they are. They are. And that's the point, though, right? It's the stirring of those kinds of energies that create the pathway for us to release our fear around those things. And or at least to bring them up to the surface so that we even know they're there. I was doing a reading today with someone who said to me, "Oh, I didn't know I had any fear." And I was just sort of gobsmacked by that, because we all have fear. We might not have it in our conscious mind, but it's certainly there in the unconscious and triggered, the first time something major happens. And or somebody crosses you, or you get into an accident, or any of the other traumas and dramas that we can experience in this lifetime. And it's there. It's not hidden. And right now it's coming up, and it's coming up in a big way, globally, individually. It's there.
It's there.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome Kamal from Pakistan. My goodness me, we've reached far and wide, haven't we, today?
Yeah, Kamal joins us in the morning. I don't know what time it is in Pakistan when he comes on at 8 o'clock in my time zone, but I always love to see him there. He's going through a Saturn return. So bless his heart, right? For moving through one of the more difficult life change periods and still standing upright. I'm sure he has a smile on his face.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Smiles help, don't they? Smiles help ourselves, and they also help other people.
Right. We're still standing, even though we've been through hell and back sometimes, we're still standing.
So yes, you've got your morning group, some members of your morning group here, because Tom's reaching out to Kamal, and Tammy she calls your morning group her other family.
Her astro family. That's funny. That's awesome. And actually, that's the beauty of the whole experience, is that, they've seen me through so many different things in my own life. This summer when my son died, they were there for me. They just held space for me to cry my first day back on the air. And you can't buy that, right? You just can't buy that kind of support. And I think that's why you do what you do. That's why I do what I do. Why anybody out there who wants to help people does what they do, to feel like they're a part of something, and to feel like they're accepted and they're loved, and their cares and their hurts are acknowledged, and it helped me to heal, to actually be on air doing those kinds of things through that tragedy in my life. So those are the things, right, that we need from each other. Those are the things that we get to focus on when fear shows up, right? We can bring it to a group and we can say, look, this is what I'm grappling with right now. It's messed up and I'm scared. And if we can be that honest, then it allows the group energy to support us and to love us through whatever it is that we're going through. I mean, it doesn't even have to be something that, terrible, like a death in a family. It could be just, I feel like the world is, going to craziness. And I'm afraid, people in this country are afraid of a civil war. And I hear that a lot lately. USA going through a Pluto return. Yowza. In the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of, political unrest and major things like climate change, and how do we feed everybody, and money's tight, all of that. So it generates fear. And we need one another to help get through that time, to get through these times.
We certainly do.
Yeah.
Well, Janet, I need to wrap this up before we just get cut off, and I don't want that.
Time for me to go eat dinner. Oh, but I love talking to you, Annette. Thank you so much for having me here.
A pleasure. A pleasure. Thank you. And everybody, thank you for being with us today. I've really appreciated the chat. And we know here at Angel Heart Radio, we're a family, just like Janet has her online family. So reach out, and thank you all for being here. I look forward to being with Janet next month and with you next week.